So for my number one, we're moving from a real war to a fake one. Starship Troopers from 1997. This is directed by Paul Verhoeven, starring Casper Van Dien, Denise Richards, and Neil Patrick Harris. The IMDb plot summary: humans in a fascist, militaristic future wage war with giant alien bugs, which is basically what this movie is. So it's very simple to describe, but I think this movie actually is one of the more layered and complicated to comprehend films I think I've maybe ever seen, to be perfectly frank, and a movie that took me about 20 years to understand. And now I think it's a masterpiece and one of my favorite films. I think this really does highlight the impact, the negative impact that war can have on a society, and how a society constructs itself around war, and that if war is seen too much as a virtue and something that is necessary, how that can be weaponized throughout every single aspect of society. And the chilling thing about this movie, and again, this took me literally 20 years to understand, is this movie is, and Paul's talked about this now, is being made as if it's a propaganda film being made inside of the universe that this film exists. Which is the extra layers. It just took me a long time to kind of figure that out as a viewer. I was too dumb as a teenager when I first saw this back in 97 to kind of get it. I didn't like this movie. I thought it was stupid. And now I just realized there's a lot more going on here that honestly is one of the more chilling films I've ever seen, to be honest, because of what it's presenting. Had you seen this film before?
I had not heard of it. I'd probably seen stills and scenes from it. But yeah, I had never watched it. It was really, I agree with you. I took it as that because
You're
I'm
much more
watching this
intelligent
now.
than my
No, just
17-year-old
older,
me. Yeah. Okay.
not a
Okay.
teenager.
Okay.
I probably would have had the same reaction, like, oh, what bugs are these? Where are they
Right.
from? No, no, no.
Yeah.
No, it's really what you said it is. And I think chilling is the right word to describe it. That imagine if this is all we knew, all
Mm-hmm.
of our lives and our jobs and success and achievement was all around this, what would that feel like?
Right.
And I think the movie does a great job of capturing that, which, and even sort of the day-to-days of prom and leaving
Mm-hmm.
school, like it's also cleverly interwoven. Like there are moments where you almost feel like this is like a teen comedy of,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but it's all with the backdrop, and it's interwoven, like I was going to say, with this whole ecosystem that's all just about war
Mm-hmm.
and who gets to do what. When does somebody go there? Do you succeed? Do you fail? And the thing that I kept thinking about at the end of the movie and throughout either is that I get this is very chilling and horrifying. At the same time, they're never going to win,
That's the
these
point. Yeah.
bugs.
Right. That's the point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then the question that I kept asking was, then what do you do though? Like, do
Mm-hmm.
you just surrender and let them just take over? Or do you keep doing this, that what they're doing? Or is there a different choice? Do you escape? Do you go somewhere else? Like, do you invest more money and science and such to find a new planet? Like, what do you do?
It never stops, and that's the very end of the
Yeah.
movie. So there's a lot of great moments, much like in Verhoeven's RoboCop, where he used commercials in RoboCop to kind of comment
Yeah.
on the society.
Amazing.
In this movie, he's using these little newsreels, and
Yeah.
there's some great ones we can talk about. But the one at the very end, kind of going off your point, is they'll keep fighting and they'll win. Is how the movie ends. It's just endless war. There's never gonna, because they
Yeah.
can't. If there was no
You can't
war,
win.
this society would crumble, and they probably can't win. But they can't
Mm.
say that, and they have to say, "Oh, we will win eventually. We'll win eventually." And that's how these societies, especially these right-wing societies that are fascistic and built on war as this the core of what they're doing, they can't have the war end, because if the war ends, then all of a sudden their whole power structure crumbles,
Right.
and the society can't function anymore. And I think the thing that makes this movie, in my mind, super chilling is this is in a way like a dystopian future, but it's not a dystopian future like a Mad Max where everything's falling apart. This
No.
society works and it's successful, and you, in a weird way, as an audience member, you're kind of pulled into it when you're like, yeah, let's get the bugs, or like there's cool
Yeah,
things
I
going on,
almost
there's hot
forget at
actors.
moments. Yeah.
Yeah, you're cheering it, and then you start to question: does
Yeah.
that mean like I'm a fascist now? Because, or I'm it, but I think it shows that it's very easy to get caught up in this
Yeah.
nationalistic, fascistic propaganda that happens and with every war.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how easy, even as an audience member, you're able to kind of forget. Wait a second, should I be cheering that they're doing this? Should I be cheering? But you are, because the movie is effective on those levels too, which I think is what Master Verhoeven can do in these situations. Um,
Yeah. But so what is the answer to my question? What should they do?
well, if you're in the power structure, the war will never stop. You'll have to invent either another war or find another enemy to
No,
fight.
I'm
You
saying
can't
to
end it.
save. My question is more on saving. Like if this is what you're in, I mean, I get that part. Obviously, people at the power structure, they don't want to ever end this. I get that. But for a second, if you were to imagine that there were a group of people just thinking about what is a true way out of this.
Oh, I
Is there
see. I
another way
see.
out of this?
Oh yeah, it's always talking and negotiation, which is with the enemy, and that's what is so amazing about this film too, and the way that the whole movie they spend all this time othering the bugs. There's
Yeah.
scenes where little kids are crushing cockroaches, like, oh, we're gonna kill the
Oh
bugs, kill the
gosh, yeah.
bugs, And there's
Yeah.
even this great scene where there's a fake sort of talking head show, and the guy's like, I think the bugs might be smart, and the other person's like, a talking bug or a thinking smart bug, like that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because they have to other
Right.
the enemy. And at the end of the film, when they capture this brain bug, they call it, and Neil Patrick Harris, who has psychic powers, like communicating with, it, he's like, "Oh, it's afraid," and then
Mm,
everyone cheers as if that's a good thing that your enemy has
right.
emotions. But I think that proves that if you did actually legitimately want to end this, the bugs are a high society that are high functioning. They have emotions. They have, if you're watching it with the bug standpoint too, you'll see like that brain bug sort of protecting his or her young. So they have emotions
Mm-hmm.
and they care too. They probably want this war to end. So it all just
Mm-hmm.
every war just comes down to talking to the other side, and that's
And
where it's
negotiating.
clear, and negotiating. But it's
Yeah.
clear in this movie they will never get. They'll never
They
get
don't
there.
want to.
They don't want to get there, right? The powers that be don't want to get there, and everyone else is brainwashed essentially into
Yeah.
not wanting it either. They don't want to end it, which is the sad thing.
Yeah. I had the same feeling, and I kept thinking about Arrival, a movie that we've covered
There
previously
you
on
go.
the podcast.
Communication. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, which is exactly that. That let's talk to these people, let's get to know them, let's get to understand what is their motivation, because truly there is nothing, I think, no matter what side you're in on, that
Mm-hmm.
you can't sit down and talk through and figure out a way out.
Agreed.
There is always a way out.
Right. Oh, totally. But do you want to do that? And I think that's
Do you
the
want to do
that's the
that?
question. Yeah. And what really resonated with me even now, and though again it went kind of all over my head at the time. This movie came out in 1997, but in many ways, I feel this movie was my lived experience, similar lived experience to having to go through the Iraq War, which happened 6 years
Mm,
after this in the United
mhm,
States, in terms of how that was heavily propagandized. Every part of the media was
mhm,
rah rah war, calling the enemy bad, and all these sort of things. And you do kind of I saw the society get kind of wrapped up in that, especially on the
mhm,
media, which is what I love about these news clips in here, and the fact that
mhm.
Verhoeven was able to do this before the US at least went on off the cliff with that. With again, war on terror. When is that going to end? Oh, whenever we get rid of terror. Well, you can't get rid of terror. So they're trying to set up, like the Bush administration was trying to set up a same mentality as the
Yeah.
leaders in this film were. And there's even this great scene too in the early on when they show, it's like a couple seconds, they show a map of like the galaxy, and they're like, here's the enemy planet. And then we're like 7,000 billion light years away from it. It's like, wait a second, like, why are we even over there then? Like, we're not even, it's not like they're any kind of
Right.
threat to us whatsoever. And I was, again, thinking back to my time as a college student in the Iraq War and sort of thinking about the same thing. Like, they're nowhere near us. It's just, you're making up this fake enemy that there's no reason for us to be even in this war in the first place. But they had to invent lies in the same way that in this society. You question, like, was that attack on Buenos Aires fake? Was that the
Yeah.
government doing that just to give an excuse to continue to now have a path to fight the bug planet? Was that Mormon colony that was there, maybe they instigated the attack by the bugs? Like, you just don't know. And I think that's what makes this movie, again, so chilling and realistic, because you can't really believe anything the media is saying when they're talking about war. And it's just the fact that he was able to pull this off in a movie that is also enjoyable on that other level, just as an action film. Again, I think this is one of the more complicated films that I've ever seen, and it really just about war, especially. That's why I had to put it on the top of the list. Even though if this is 20 years ago, I did dismiss this film for a very, very long time, but I was dumb. So what can I do?
No. Well, I'm very glad to have watched it like now to sort of appreciate
Yeah.
it fully. So this was a great pick. And yeah, I would underline the media point. Like that is, we talked about class, we talked about the motivations of people at power,
Mm-hmm.
their selfish indulgences and such. But I think the other angle is media. because that's such a huge part of the connective tissue, I think, between the people at power and the people at large.
Yeah.
And how do you kind of mobilize, motivate, brainwash all of it? Like, that is such a powerful tool. And going back to even Inglourious Bastard, like, that's the power. The propaganda is such a huge aspect of this whole thing. If we didn't have a way to communicate in a mass way or tell stories in a way that could draw people in this fashion, none of this would even happen, I think.
Let's ban movies then. We'll solve war.
I guess no more podcasts for you.
I know. Oh no, we'll have to stop our podcast. Well, then this must keep going. but I think that just goes back again to that Truffaut quote about there's no such thing as an anti-war movie. I do believe that as much as even Starship Troopers. You look at this and you're like, this is the most dystopian society you can imagine, but it's still enjoyable to watch. So then what is that really saying?
There you have it. Exactly. And you're cheering for these people, and you want them to succeed, and you're cheering for when she gets her like pilot license and what have you. Like, all of that, right? So pretty amazing.
Yeah, great film. So if anyone hasn't seen it, or if they saw Starship Troopers and just dismissed it like I did, give it another shot just with this lens of what Paul was trying to do. I think is maybe why it didn't do very well. It was big flop in the US because I think it just went over people's heads too much. Paul's problem when he tries to make movies about America, it's too mirror in the face and people don't want to see that. So then they don't go to Showgirls, they don't go to Starship Troopers. But
I mean, to be fair though, to him, I guess, like the way the movie is constructed and its look and its feel, I think that's very important. Like it has. Let me ask you this: did it feel sort of cheesy when it came out?
Yes,
that's the brilliance of it.
Yes,
like it's not. It's a satire. It's not meant to be realistic, which I think is so critical. Because if you made this in a way that it looked realistic, I think that would be. I don't know if I would be into that.
Right. You need the actors who look really good but aren't really good actors. You need the CW soap opera kind of plot lines in the first act.
Right.
It's all just like a very, very, but again, if you were in this society, they would make a very cheesy, war picture to try to get people to hate the bugs. In the same way that you can look at some of the other, World War II films or what have you that we haven't talked about in this podcast that are very much cheesy.
Yeah.
Because that makes for better propaganda. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.